Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal, where as you can see, I'm joined by James Benge of CBS, which means it is Inside Arsenal Extra Time, a little bit later than usual this week. But unfortunately, one of us, not me, has been suffering with a little bit of illness. James, how has COVID been for you this week? COVID is still around then.
Bizarre. I feel like I'm the only man in the UK with a test. And when I was sort of telling my mother, who works in public health, she said, "Why did you test?" It's been grim. It's been a bit of a sort of fun flashback. I was sort of made me remember. You remember back in 2020? Were you at the Mikel Arteta press conference where he had COVID?
Yes, before
Yeah,
Portsmouth.
it's quite scary.
Yeah, mad
No, it
times.
was one before City away because then the game got postponed.
Oh, that was it. Portsmouth was the game before, I think, wasn't it? When
Mm.
everyone was gathered around him on the pitch, and then we found out he had COVID as well. Yeah, just mad times. Mad times. That. So
Let's not relive that.
no, let's not relive those times. They weren't the best. They weren't the best. But you're good. You're fit. You're healthy. You look fine. So obviously on the mend now. Missed a fun game, by the way, midweek. Loved it.
Yeah,
The Bolton game.
old
Really
school.
enjoyed it. It was proper old school Carabao Cup vibes. It was. Yeah, I was just imagining Carlos Vela running down through the middle and chipping the goalkeeper.
Yes,
Basically, all
Fran
we needed.
Marina.
Exactly. That's all we needed to top that off. But it was a lot of fun. Enjoyed that. And I think we will chat about that a little bit later on, or sort of weave Ethan Nwaneri into the chat anyway, because it was a good night for him. Fantastic night for some of the Arsenal youngsters. But we're going to start today. We've had some really good injury news after what has felt like weeks and weeks of bad injury news. Mikel Arteta has decided to cheer everyone up today at his press conference, which took place a little bit earlier on today at London Colney ahead of tomorrow's game, obviously against Leicester. And yeah, he's thrown a ray of light out there on Merino. I mean, I'll bring up the quotes here. We'll have a look at what he's had to say about everyone. So we just quickly rattle through these and then we'll discuss them. So on David Raya, he said we'll have to wait 24 hours to see if he's looking good or not. Whether asked, if that's would you sort of risk him ahead of PSG? He said it's not about taking a risk. It's about a player being fit and available or not. When we have that clarity for Leicester, which is the main thing that we are thinking about at the moment, we will make that decision tomorrow. On Timber and Ben White, he says Timber was able to take part in training today. That's good news. He'll be available. Ben hopefully will. And then the little bit surprising one, Merino, he says tomorrow is too soon. The next week we will see. He had partial training today. He's been working hard and he's looking good. It's just about the healing of that bone and how mature it is that is to expose him to contract. And then even on Tommy Asu, he says he's now back in partial training, which is good because I was getting a bit worried about Tommy when he talked about the other day, didn't he? He was talking about the knee injury and he said it was like the first phase of the knee injury. And immediately there was a like, red flag going off. It's like, oh God, what does that mean? I mean, you normally hear that when you're talking about ACLs or something like that. So, yeah, good news on Tommy, but Merino especially really positive. I wasn't expecting that today, I have to say. You?
Yeah, total bolt from the blue. I mean, almost one of those questions I was watching along on this one. I was like, why are you asking about Mikel Merino? Shows how good I am in press conferences. I thought, you'd get a sort of non-answer from Arteta, but I mean, that's an intriguing timeline, which makes you think. I would assume PSG as well, being a Tuesday night game, is also going to come just too soon for him. But can he be involved off the bench against Southampton, say?
Possibly, yeah.
I think that would be an ideal circumstances as well. I mean, very much the opposite of Ricardo Calafiori making his full Premier League debut at the Etihad against Southampton would be quite a nice way, I think, to start, whether as a starter or a sub. And I mean, the quotes we didn't use there, but are so interesting is Arteta very openly acknowledging how much Arsenal are struggling without Martin Odegaard. And we know that Merino's not a like-for-like replacement. He's not a high-volume, high-pass sort of guy. But just having more options in midfield would be so profoundly valuable at a time when 30-year-olds are playing every minute available to them. Huge pressure being put on Kai Havertz, for instance, to be the centre forward and the number 10. It would be really, really helpful if the Arsenal could have Merino in a position where he can then have that fortnight of the international break to get fully up to speed. It sounds like, from what Arteta was saying, he's really invested in getting back as quick as he can, but really think about it as hitting the ground running after the international break when things do get quite tricky again for Arsenal.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at these quotes he said about Martin. He said, if you put me in this scenario before I started the season with the calendar we were given, the fixtures we had, the 3 away games that we had, and the amount of injuries we had to deal with and how we got out of that, I would be very, very pleased. It's not just Martin. Obviously, he's one of our best players and a player that has more impact in the team in many ways, but there were many others as well. And the team has coped extremely well because we have an exceptional group. A lot of players have taken a different role in the leadership, in their importance in the team, and they embrace the challenge. I'm really happy for that. Now, this week, honestly, Arsenal have been absolutely slagged off left, right, and centre, it feels like, post Manchester City. I mean, the Roy Keane stuff is just, quite frankly, ridiculous what he was saying.
Gary Neville as well. Did you hear his line?
In that same podcast? No, I didn't. I just sort of. What did he say?
Pulling out the 1999 FA Cup semi-final, where, credit to Manchester United. Admittedly, they would have been knocked out if it wasn't for Dennis Bergkamp's penalty. Let's not relive that too long. But it sort of seems like Gary Neville's fundamentally failed to grasp the difference between a league game and a cup game.
Yeah.
If Manchester United had drawn after 120 minutes in that cup game, they could have very easily got eliminated. Arsenal, meanwhile, would have been eminently happy to take the draw at half-time. You play differently if it's not win or bust. Bizarre. And that's the level of discourse we've had around Arsenal this week. It sort of seems utterly unmoored. Another one I throw in. Sorry, I know you were probably building to something, but I've got to get it off my chest, man. You've had all week on this show. Colleague, I know, but Jamie Carragher sort of talking on the overlap about the dark arts. And no one's actually explained to me what these dark arts were. I will fully accept that David Raya did what every goalkeeper does in that situation, went down, took his time. I think Michael Oliver should have booked him quite quickly because then it does not happen again. Beyond that, the only dark arts I can see is players that have played 3 high-intensity games in a week, one of them on the Thursday night, cramping up, getting injured, and then getting substituted off, which is like one of the... I mean, when people say Arsenal are bad at the dark arts, that sounds like bad at the dark arts to me.
Yeah. No, honestly, mate, it's done my head in, the whole thing. It's been a masterclass from Manchester City in how to spin the narrative, though. I think for the moment, basically, their players were queuing up to go through the mix zone to have a go at Arsenal. It was like, okay, we're going to take the lead on this. There's going to be no talk about the fact that Man City struggled to beat a 10-man Arsenal and were reliant on a last-minute goal that deflected in the second half to do it. Instead, all the talk has been about Arsenal. Instead of praising Arsenal for what they did on the back of an unbelievable week, like you said, when they had 3 games in a week away from home, they had players who were cramping up, who were being thrown in early in terms of Calafiori and probably even Timber as well. I'm sure the plan wouldn't have been to give them that amount of minutes so early on. And yet there was just no talk about that. And it's somehow been spun as Arsenal being the villains in the whole thing. And it's just totally mad. But I think it's been, City have played it very, very well, I think. I think the media have fallen into the trap, and it's been a bizarre week in terms of the fallout.
Can we just offer those some context? That I don't know if you've explained this, but I do feel it's been missing, and maybe us being in our position can kind of help educate the viewers a little bit. You sort of talked about the City players coming out to speak. I think maybe people don't understand that really in our jobs, maybe more than it should be, what the players say to us after the game really gets the chance to dictate kind of what the talking points are from the game. I had... After the game, coming back on the train, I had a piece to write, and I had quotes from Manuel Akanji, and I had quotes from Bernardo Silva. So that's going to like frame what I write. These people know more about the game than me, and so Arsenal sometimes do this. I know people think we blow it out of all proportion, but they make a bit of a rod for their own back by not talking and not getting their side of the story out there. And I did really feel that on Monday at like 12:30 when everyone's saying, "Oh, Akanji's the next guy to say this." I'm like, well. No one from Arsenal has really done that.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think they played it perfectly. Everyone had 3, 4, 5 players go through the mix zone and actually stop and talk. And then because everyone's got those quotes, that's what the stories are going to be running drip fed at the times that they're going to be released to the TV media, to the written media, and that just dominates the headlines then, and it just builds and builds and builds. And I think it's just been a mad reaction to what was an unbelievable result for Arsenal, given the context of the game and given the context of the week. And yet no one's talked about that, and there's been no praise about it. So going back to those quotes from Arteta when he's talking about how they've done, and if you'd have offered him this basically with the injuries and given the fixtures that they've had to come, I'm not surprised he's very, very pleased. I think he absolutely should be. But it'll be a big boost to get some of these players back. And just sort of going back to Merino, I mean, he was asked on him here. I like some of these quotes. So on his road recovery, he says, we're trying to keep him in the cage because he's been really pushing everybody, the physios, doctors, everybody, and he's ready to go. He really wants it. I think we are comfortable now to start exposing him to contact, and he looked really good in training. I mean, that's a really positive update, that, that he's
except putting him in a cage.
Yeah, maybe. But just the fact he's now, we can expose him to contact, and he can come up and maybe have Gabriel fall on him. Maybe keep Gabriel away from him, actually, for a day or so from this one. Put him on the same team as Gabriel for now, so there's no chance of him falling on him this time and breaking the other shoulder. But when he was asked, what can he bring to the midfield when he's available, I thought these were good. He says, he's going to bring, firstly, an unbelievable football brain. He's so intelligent. The way he decides, occupies space and make positions, it's very rare to see that. Then a really talented player in every phase, defending, attacking. He can deliver and do things that complement really well with the quality we have in midfield. Physicality for sure. And then he's a big threat. The moment that he's in the opposition box, you'll see that he's a big, big threat. I like that last quote as well, because we've always been talking about Arsenal's, can they score enough goals this season, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think anyone has really factored in Merino into maybe Arteta's plan for this season in terms of where the goals are going to come from. I wouldn't be surprised if in Arteta's head, he's got quite a high number in terms of what sort of goals he reckons Merino could potentially get with those late runs into the box.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is we tend to sort of look at the players' past output and then extrapolate forward. We all watched quite a bit of Merino at Real Sociedad sort of retroactively. When we knew he was coming close to Arsenal. I'm sure we've all watched a little bit more. And, I think it's 8 goals last season, 6 a while back. But it's, a bit that his abilities come into play here, but also it's the role he plays. I know at Sociedad, he was often playing a little bit deeper, more of a connecting guy. Left 8 for Arsenal. We saw that Granit Xhaka was not a scorer at all, and he nearly got to double figures in his one season. Didn't think my point was that bad, Charles. As you
Sorry,
take me
mate.
off the screen, but I mean, when you saw him in the box in the Euros as well, you think this is a guy that doesn't lack anything. And if others create shots for him, especially headed shots, no reason why I don't think he'll get to double figures given how much of the season he's missed, but no reason why he can't have a really healthy goal return for Arsenal. And that's what we're looking at, isn't it? We're looking at Arsenal as a team that will score by committee. And maybe that's better than, you see with Man City on the other end, how any one player coming out of that system, out of a group of 3 or 4, could have a massive impact on them. I think having so many players who could score half a dozen goals is so valuable.
Yeah. I think his return is going to spark so many interesting sort of debates, and how it all pans out in terms of what the long-term vision is for the midfield with Arsenal, with Merino involved in it and maybe embedded into it. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. But obviously, I think, look, it's too early for this weekend. The way Mikel's speaking, potentially, as you say, Southampton, maybe we might get a first sight of him. I mean, that would be a bonus, because I literally thought international break, nothing before the international break. And even then, it might be a bit of a push for the first couple of games afterwards. So if he's back available now, then that's going to be a big, big boost. I mean, when you talk about midfield and injury updates in terms of Arsenal, you go to the opposite end of it. I mean, this is really bad news for Rodri. Unbelievable player. In my mind, should be the Ballon d'Or winner this season. And you never want to see any sort of injury like this. And it's so unlucky how it happened as well. Don't even get me started on people who have been trying to blame Thomas Partey for that injury, by the way. It's just the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. So Pep admitting today, sort of revealing that what we all kind of figured was the case, that he's out for the season, ACL, some meniscus as well. So next season he'll be here. This season is over for him, says Pep, and he said an awful lot more. So, I mean, terrible news for Rodri, terrible news for Man City. I mean, this has got to have a big impact on the title race, you would think. I mean, he's that important to Man City, isn't he? He's a huge, huge player. You saw the difference when he went off injured against Arsenal last weekend, firsthand. So from an Arsenal point of view, obviously this must massively improve, their chances of what they want to achieve this season in terms of the Premier League.
Yeah, it's a gigantic loss for City. When we wrote the story on Monday, and it's quite interesting, actually. I believe that City had a pretty good sense on Monday that his ACL was done, and the questions were over the meniscus, and that's why you had Pep coming out during the EFL Cup games and saying might be better than we think, might be worse. Like I'm putting 2 and 2 together a bit there, but I think that's what what's happened. So it's actually worse than City might have hoped. There's no one that can do everything. Kovacic can maybe be the one that comes in and gives you some of the possession stuff. You could play Stones or a Kanji there, and then you get in the ball winning. Maybe Gundogan as well would be the possession guy, or Bernardo would do. But they're not going to do all that, and they're not going to score the goals that Rodri does that always seem to be the goals that change the course of a Premier League season, that win the Champions League for his club. I mean, we all know what the record is. It's 24% of games they lose. I'm sure that will be less than 24% by the time the season's over. But yeah, you can't replace the best player in the world. I think it is very similar to the Ødegaard thing. And, if Ødegaard were out for the season, we would be saying on this podcast, the conversation isn't about the title race anymore. It's about top 4. And I think for City, it's now... I mean, I don't think they're favourites for the title anymore without Rodri. To be honest, I think Arsenal now are.
Do you really think get you that?
But then again, I think I thought Crystal Palace were going to finish top 4.
You did. How's that going? How's that going? Weekly Crystal Palace update.
Aging like milk.
Yeah. Well, what was the stat I added you into after the weekend?
Crystal Palace is so far the only team in the Premier League not to have been in the lead for 1 minute. Brilliant.
What a bet that was. That's going to go down in the history. Fantastic bet. So, yeah, I mean, it's a huge blow to City, no doubt about it. It's interesting. I mean, the quality of City's squad, like there, you say if Arsenal without Ødegaard for the season, you'd probably be saying, right, it's top 4, not title. You certainly wouldn't be saying that about Man City now, even without Rodri. You still think they've got a very good chance of winning the title even without him. But there's no doubt it's going to make it much, much tougher. And I think we saw as soon as he went off against Arsenal that the game changed. I think Arsenal improved anyway, but I think the game certainly changed just because Rodri's not on the pitch for Manchester City there. But yeah, the Thomas Partey, I can't believe he got blamed for the Thomas Partey. Even the first one, I can't believe people were blaming Kai Havertz for what happened in the first 5 seconds of it. I mean, Rodri literally moves across.
They ran into each other. Yeah. They did it.
Rodri takes 2 steps. He doesn't take his eyes off Havertz. He looks at him and just walks across and then tries to get him sent off or tries to get him booked. It's so blatantly obvious. And I can't believe, apparently Gary Neville was on commentary saying that Havertz stuck an arm out or something. It's just, Rodri literally initiated all of that, all of it.
What some people watch when they're watching football, I don't know. It's right in front of you, mate.
Yeah, it was mad. But obviously, yeah, big blow to Rodri, and I hope he comes back as soon as he can, because you want the best players involved in football matches, and Rodri's certainly one of them. Right, Leicester this weekend. Do you start Ethan Nwaneri?
I think why not? I'm inclined to trust. So the one thing I was looking at the sort of Leicester stats, they're not as bad as their points tally of 3 points and no wins would suggest.
Mm-hmm.
Every game's been either a draw or they've lost by the odd goal in 3.
They were massively unlucky against your boys, Crystal Palace.
Very unlucky against them. Played really well, I thought, against Spurs as well. That was at home. I do think they'd be a much tougher test at home. But I think they may well be a team that just needs a bit of breaking down. I mean, if you look at the midfield, they're probably going to roll out like Skip, Winks, and Ndidi. Like, they're going to be pretty happy in the physical battle. So you're going to need someone that's got a bit of craft, a bit of guile. And Ethan Nwaneri is the best option in those circumstances. Someone that can pick the lock. And, if it's not working after an hour, you bring on one of your veteran steadying presences in Jorginho or Thomas Partey and you get on with it. But I think if off the back of a really good performance against League One opposition, and then a team that's sort of starting to find its groove, you can't trust Ethan Nwaneri, then I don't know that you're necessarily going to be able to. You're going to feel like you're able to this season. I mean, it's not the end of the world if he does Havertz, Trossard, Partey, Rice as the sort of 4. But I mean, I think this is a great opportunity.
That's how I see it. I just think it's a really good opportunity. It's you're at home, you've got Declan Rice and Thomas Partey who you can play him with there. So it's not like you're missing It's not like North London derby when we were discussing this before the derby. There was no Rice or anything like that. You're at home in a game. You're going to have a lot of possession in. He's coming off a midweek game where he scored 2 goals. He's going to be absolutely full of confidence, flying high. I just think it just feels like an absolute no risk game to do it. Obviously, it's a big game. You want to get 3 points, but I don't think starting Ethan is lessening your chances of getting 3 points against Leicester. So I just don't really see any risk to it. I just think it feels to me like the perfect opportunity to play him, because you're not going to play them against PSG obviously on Tuesday night. That's not going to happen. So this is just a really good chance in my mind to play him. I'm not sure Mikel will, to be honest, but I would not be against this at all. It's interesting because I've been saying this. I spoke about it in my show this morning, and I had lots of people in the comments I saw saying, "No, you're getting too carried away. You're getting too carried away." A lot of people are agreeing, obviously, as well. But I'm surprised at how many people were like, "Oh, you're getting too carried away." I just think he just clearly looks ready. I don't fear that it would be a step too far playing him from the start in a Premier League game. You know, I've not seen anything to suggest that would be the case. And so it just feels like a really good opportunity to do it for me this weekend. Yeah. And like I said, you play Partey behind him, you can play Rice next to him. It then allows you to play Kai Havertz as a central striker for me, which I absolutely want to see. And it ticks all the boxes for me, but we'll wait and see, I guess. What are you thinking in terms of starting 11 for this game?
And when I did my predicted one, I did go Trossard and Havertz, I'll admit.
I would probably go with that as well, yeah.
You do have to sort of factor in as well. Can you explain to guys like Gabriel Jesus and Raheem Sterling why their good performances in midweek and not being rewarded with a starting spot like Ethan's is? And I think Mikel Arteta can, but that's the other sort of Arteta is a coach that's very conscious of sort of hierarchies and of respecting the senior players on the fringe of his side. But you know what, Mikel? Have some fun. And I think this whole start to the season for Arsenal has been, whilst incredibly impressive, so emotionally draining. I think it is the perfect time to cut loose, to give the young lad his Spurs, his metaphorical Spurs, not his Tottenham hot, and just enjoy it. And I think, you can do that in the knowledge that if the game needs changing, you've got half a dozen players you can bring on to replace Ethan. And he's shown enough that it's not the end of the world for him on an emotional level if this first Premier League start isn't quite what he hopes for.
No, exactly. There's no harm whatsoever. If he has a quiet 60 minutes, you take him off. There's no harm in that whatsoever. It won't do any sort of damage. So I thought midweek was perfect for Arteta, really, because you had Sterling play very well, score a goal, get himself a couple of assists. He didn't actually get the assist for Jesus. So I always thought it was his shot and the keeper saved it. Does that not go down as an assist, official assist, if your shot's saved?
No. Some places
it does in FPL,
the assist
anyway.
Stats are very unreliable as well, because you get like some places count penalties won as an assist, and I think you should, but Opta doesn't.
Yeah, because in FPL you get an assist you get assist points if that happened. But anyway, he had a good game, Sterling, I thought, which was great. I thought Jesus, I was surprised, came in for a bit of criticism, certainly on this channel in some of the comments, which I thought he had a good game. I really enjoyed Gabriel Jesus' performance in the week. And so for Arteta, it was perfect. You had Nwaneri starting, scoring twice. You had Sterling showing what he can do and growing into the game, giving himself a nice confidence boost. You had Jesus, who I thought looked very fit, which was the most important thing for 90 minutes as well, and was lively throughout. So it was a good night for Arteta, and it just adds to that going into this weekend's game. I think it adds to the competition levels in the squad and things like that. So it was perfect, and it was great to be there and see Ethan have a night like that. Like I said at the start, it was proper throwback League Cup Arsene Wenger fare for me. Right, before we start wrapping this up, I'm going to go through a few comments and questions that have been sent in. Let's move on to the first one, shall we? Denler96 says, hi, Charles and Benge. I hope I spelled that. Lots of people actually in the comments have been wishing you well in terms of your health.
Oh, thank you, guys. It's only COVID.
Yes, I'll pass that on. It says, not sure if you guys have spoken about this, but I was wondering what your thoughts were in regards to the City game. Had we kept 11 players on the pitch, do you think we would have scored more goals? My biggest thought has been about the potential tactical battle. We saw Arteta adjust his tactics after going 1-0 down, which brought us back into the game along with Rodri's injury. Do you think there would have been an even bigger tactical battle in the second half? It was 11 on 11. I know we've moved past City, but I'm just curious what you guys think. And then he says in relation to Leicester, Nwaneri should start. Yeah, I mean, we'll never know, obviously, how that second half would have gone. But personally, I'd have absolutely loved to have seen it because Arsenal finished that first half so well. I thought they were absolutely on top, got themselves in front. And it would have been intriguing to see, A, how City reacted to that in the second half, and B, what Arsenal could have done 11 on 11 in terms of going on and potentially adding goals to the game and being the threat that they were in that second half of the first half.
I think in Arsenal, though, inevitably at some stage would have drifted towards that low block.
Yeah.
And maybe to an extent, I think the sending off sort of deaden the chances of Arsenal winning. But I do think it sort of cleared up their task a little bit. And I think it would have been really hard if, let's say, it's 70 minutes and it's still 2-1. What do you do then if you're Arteta? There was a real clarity of purpose for Arsenal. And actually, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Like, we were robbed of this incredibly brilliant game that might have gone up there with, some of the great 2-2s between City and Liverpool. But it made it really absorbing. And I think it lessened Arsenal. Weirdly, I think it lessened Arsenal's chances of losing because their defense is just so phenomenal. They're such an intelligent group of players without the ball. They know what to do, especially when the task in front of them is so clear. But then, you would have seen guys like Sterling and Jesus really, I think, come to the fore in this game. I know that obviously Jesus came on, but would you have seen Arsenal sort of drop a bit deeper, but really play that counter-attacking football that I think has stung City a lot this season?
Yeah,
I think so. I still think Arsenal might.
Back to the last 20 minutes of the Brighton game, once Arsenal had sort of settled into the 10-11 against Brighton, and then started to try and hurt them on the break, and they did have the chances with Havertz and obviously Saka as well. I think we'd have seen a lot more than that. We certainly would have seen a lot more intent going forward from Arsenal had it been 11-11, no doubt about it. And I think they would have. I think they showed in the first half they could hurt City, and I'm sure we'd have seen it more. Obviously, again, it is all hypothetical, but it would have been intriguing to watch. And I think Arsenal would have beaten them 11-11. I really do. But I still take a draw and can't wait for the return game in February. Carl here says, currently honeymooning on a cruise in the Med. Very nice, Carl. Congratulations. Hope all is going well. Thanks for the Arsenal-related updates. Which youngster which featured midweek do you and Benge Boy, that's a new one,
take it,
think have a long-term future at the club in the first team? I mean, I'm guessing we're both probably going to say that we've already spoken about Ethan on that. But sort of moving on to Miles, who did you actually get to watch the full game?
I did. I've had nothing to do but watch TV yesterday. I watched that and the Mr. McMahon documentary in full.
I haven't watched Mr. McMahon, but I'm getting on that.
Very worth watching.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting on that. Miles Lewis Skelly, I thought was very good as well. I loved his pass, obviously, to set up the chance for Sterling on the route to Ethan's first goal, but just his all-round game. When you're watching young players and they just, it's hard to explain, isn't it? But you can just look at them. They have that kind of aura around them where they just clearly feel very, very comfortable in their surroundings. They're not overawed. They're not nervy. You can see some youngsters who are nervy and see others who have just got that inner confidence in themselves that they kind of feel like, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to perform. And I think Miles, as much as Ethan's been getting the headlines quite rightly for what he did, I think Miles, again, has shown why he is very, very popular at Arsenal in terms of what he might produce. I really liked him over there on that left back role, moving into midfield.
Yeah, because what I really liked about it, he obviously did a bit of the inversion, but you sort of felt like he understood his limits and he was going to sort of tuck into more of a inside left channel rather than, I know he did a bit of it, but rather than sort of go the full Zinchenko and go wandering. He was sort of like, I know this is a new position to me. I'm not going to go mad trying to impress Mikel Arteta. I'm going to play my game from left back. I like that. And I, of course, loved everything about the way he went about what must have been the hardest debut any young footballer's ever had, coming on a yellow card at the Etihad.
Yeah.
Great kid, great attitude. The goalkeeper, Jack, is it? I keep getting confused. Jack, don't want him at the club, Everett. Yeah, you know why? You know why he's not welcome around Arsenal while I am? He was born while I was sort of celebrating the end of my A-levels, my A-level summer. We can't be having that. Just no.
If that's what you think, imagine what I think, mate.
I know. You've had time to get used to this.
This
is all sort of hitting me.
Did you see the stat that they're the first 4 players to play at the Emirates who were born after
Disgusting.
it?
It's disgraceful.
Mad. We're at that stage now. It's just absolutely crazy. So I mean, in answer to Carl's question, I think we're both probably predicting that Ethan and Miles have got the best opportunity. I liked Josh Nichols' performance. I know he gave the ball away a few times, but I liked what he was trying, and I thought he showed a lot of bravery on the ball at times to try and make things happen. And he just, when you look at Ethan and Miles and their sort of physical stature and stuff, they look ready. Josh just looks a little bit behind them in terms of how he looks on the pitch, but I thought I saw it. I liked his performance, Josh.
Can I quickly get your view on how you would manage Miles? I think we all sort of expect Ethan to be around the squad pretty much for good now.
I think Miles goes out on loan at some point.
Yeah,
I think
that's what I thought.
it's especially if he has genuinely been trained up to be a left back. It's like, well, it's the toughest role at Arsenal at the moment because you've got Calafiori, Timber, Zinchenko, Tomiyasu. You've got players in front of you, real senior players in front of you who are going to be playing that role. So I think it's good to keep him around this season and to sort of drip feed him into the first team surroundings. But I think when you're sort of assessing things again next season, I think potentially new contract and season out on loan just seems like the right path in terms of his development at this point.
Yeah, completely agree. That's what I'd say.
Cool. And then finally, one here from JD who says, "Hi, Charles and James. Following the strong showing of youngsters versus Bolton, MLS, Ethan and Nichols looking good. How much of a role do you think the likes of Jack Wilshere and Per have in installing belief and professionalism in these players? Love the show. Love the shoes. Presume you mean love the shows.
I do have nice shoes.
Yeah, I thought this was a good question actually. I mean, myself, and we've sat down with Jack, we've sat down with Per a few times. I love sitting down with both of them. You know, sometimes you sit down with people and for conversations, for interviews, and you're just like, this is going to be hard work. When you sit down with Per and with Jack, it's just, this isn't going to be hard work. This is going to be a really good interview. We're going to get a lot from them. And I remember sitting down with both of them ahead of the Youth Cup final last season at two seasons ago at Colney, and just having really good sort of conversations with them about the final, but about the sort of how they're both managing their roles, and especially Per in terms of how he manages the academy and how it's not just about on the pitch, but what they're doing off the pitch, and his whole strong young gunners, which is this sort of phrase that he uses and what he wants everyone to work towards in terms of they can be strong on the pitch, but they can be really strong off the pitch in terms of education and everything like that as well. So, I mean, they have huge amounts in answers to the question, don't they? They've especially Per, I think, because everyone's under his umbrella at the academy, just has a huge role to play in not just how the players are playing on the pitch, but how they are ready to make the progression into the first team and how ready they are. And I think Per deserves huge credit for that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think like you said with Jack, it's hard to really know how much as well, just because I don't have the stuff in front of me. It's hard for me to know just how involved he's been in kind of these players' individual playing careers, because that's what he's focused on. But I think a lot of what we're seeing here is about footballers that are not phased by these big stages that they're being thrust into. And I know, kind of very much based on what you were saying as well, that Per Mertesack's priority with Arsenal and the academy has really been about not just training up footballers to be sold or to be first teamers, but about sort of developing good young men. And the idea that, in any walk of life, I think his vision would be the sort of, if you came across someone in any walk of life, whatever it is, doctor, lawyer, Tesco or Premier League football club, and you see that they spent time in Arsenal, the Arsenal Academy on their CV, the character you're getting. And I do think that's really starting to shine through. You hear that as well with the reports of guys that go out on loan. The vast majority of them now, clubs are coming back and saying, good kids, really easy to work with. And I know that, for many of our viewers who are really emotionally invested in the football, that kind of doesn't feel like it should matter that much, but it pays dividends then on the pitch, because you get good kids who can rise to the occasion. And I do feel like, and I know from speaking to people, that that's what Arsenal have got in their hands in the academy at the moment. And that's really nice. I think that's something that fans should feel proud about.
Oh, well, I don't think there's any better way to end the show than on that very high note. Are you there tomorrow? Are you
no, because I have COVID and I don't want to make everyone ill.
Well, of course,
I wasn't going anyway.
I'm taking Luke tomorrow. It's his first game tomorrow, so yeah, special day. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get the win. Yeah, so looking forward.
Yeah, because if they lose,
he's never coming again.
Gamble that, yeah, exactly.
He's
high
never
risk.
coming again. I'm sorry, he's not coming again if we lose tomorrow. So it's sorry, mate. Sorry, Sam. No can do. I'm taking my daughter next time, not you. Well, I have to take her anyway because she's absolutely demanding that I take her next time. She's very upset that
rightly so.
Luke's got this one and she hasn't. But yeah. Anyway, I'll see you at some point. Anyway, in the next
Monday,
week or so,
maybe.
I imagine. No, I'm not going to be able to go to Colney for that because it's
Tuesday, maybe.
School run duties. I'm in the crowd on Tuesday, not in the press box.
Oh, there you go.
And I'm in the press box for Southampton. the following week on the following Saturday. But
Nice easy one, though.
PSG, I'm definitely watching from the crowd. Thank you very much for joining me, mate. I hope you feel better by the end of the weekend. And thanks everyone for watching and for listening. As always, I will try and do a show in the morning quickly, just sort of going through predicted 11 and that sort of thing. And then not quite sure about post-match because, like I said, I've got Luke with me. Maybe he'll do it. We'll get him involved in the video afterwards, something like that. But we shall see. Until then, have a great start to your weekend, everyone. And yeah, we'll be back next week to do this all over again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.